Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's GSA weekly topic, where we're going to talk about eligibility, benefits, and return on investment. I'm Alan Shipes with BidSpeed, and for those of you that we're on the first hour, thanks for joining us here on the second hour. This is our GSA series, and our guest speaker that we have, a longtime business partner of BidSpeed, there at GSA Focus, Mr. Josh Sladek. And Josh knows all there is and everybody at GSA and can tackle any GSA problem out there. So I probably just sold you over the moon there, Josh, there. So Josh we've partnered with GSA Focus for the better part of 9 years to a wonderful 100% success of historical BidSpeed, legacy BidSpeed clients obtaining GSA schedules, maintaining GSA schedules there. So it doesn't get any better than 100% there. So Josh and his team know a lot about GSA. We want to educate you 8As, you economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, and you HUBZone socioeconomic statuses out there under the 7J program. We try to bring a lot of good content about GSA schedules, what they can do for your business. And for those of you that already have GSA schedules, how can you extend the use of those schedules? How can you make those get better use out of those schedules? So those are the types of topics we cover and we'll be covering throughout the year on this GSA series here. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over and give the controls to Josh, and he's going to have some slides and discussion points to take you through. So punch through your questions in the question toolbar. We'll try to pick those up at the end, and if we do not get to all of them, then we will make sure and follow up with you on those as we go. So Josh, Happy New Year to you, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Right. Thanks so much, Alan. And yep, I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me 1 minute. Looks like we're getting there. Show my screen. Okay. Well, thanks so much for attending today. I'm Josh Sladek. I am with GSA Focus. I founded the company about 15, 16 years ago. And today we're going to be going over, two very important questions when you are considering getting into the GSA program. Eligibility, do you qualify? And then the benefits. Basically, I'm going to be running you through kind of an ROI, return on investment analysis of the GSA program. The good, the bad, the ugly. I'm not going to, blow any smoke at you and try to make it seem like there's a lot of easy money. There's a lot of money, but it's, you got to work for it. So I'll give you an honest assessment of the benefits and the ROI that comes with becoming a contractor inside of the GSA program. So just to kind of jump in and get started here, I like to talk about myself, just to go over a couple things, mostly to build credibility. I don't like to talk about myself, but I feel like it's necessary. So GSA Focus, we founded, I founded the company. Our success rate is pretty high, 98%. We do a lot of we're very, very honest up front about eligibility and ROI. Don't want to get too kind of sales pitchy on this, but I do want to kind of give you my background. We're at about 500 clients. Our clients, and this goes into the ROI, our clients' average return is $917,000 a year. So that's the going average among all of our clients. This company, that I founded back in, it's actually 2006, so that's a little bit of a mistype there. I'm a fourth generation small business owner. That's where my heart is. That's where my mission is. 99.5 of our clients are small business, so that's where we focus. And our team is currently at 8 or 9, actually 9. Believe we're at 9 now. So like I said, we're here to help small businesses compete and win federal contracts. And we really do that by supporting their entry into the GSA Schedule program. And our core values really circle around between character, innovation, and transparency. So that's just a little bit about us. Got a lot of clients, have helped a lot of small businesses get into the program. And I'm going to run you through kind of just the first couple steps here. So I always like to start with this. I know it's off topic, but I can't assume that everybody has a perfect understanding of what the GSA program is. So I do like to take a couple minutes and just walk through that. And I hit it from 3 different angles. So the first angle is just a general definition. You go to the GSA.gov website. What do they say about this program? Just from a kind of overhead view. So basically, you know, it's good to talk about acronyms when you're dealing with the government. GSA stands for General Services Administration, and it is a kind of a branch of the government that oversees procurement, purchasing, all that kind of stuff. And they have a program, kind of a sub-department, I'd say, of that agency that oversees what's called the Multiple Award Schedule Program. And, you know, there's a lot of people in there at GSA that oversee this, that contracting officers, contracting specialists, customer service. They have, you know, it's a whole big department. And this program is really, you know, it goes by many names. You may have heard of GSA Contract, GSA Schedule, MAS or Multiple Award Schedule, FSS or Federal Supply Schedule, and there's even a couple others, FAS and so on. But these are the big ones. The technical, or you know, kind of the truest term is Multiple Award Schedule Program, and that's what the GSA is trying to go for. But GSA Contract is really what most people on the streets talk, you know, when they're talking about it, will refer to it as. Getting into the definition now, it's a $0 IDIQ. So it's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. The main word there is indefinite. So it's more of a program. I don't like to call it a GSA contract. I actually like to call it the GSA Schedule Program, because when you are, you know, awarded your GSA contract, you don't get any dollars for that. You are basically, you know, kind of in the arena now to battle for contracts. So it is kind of what some people would call a contracting mechanism for sales to flow through, or a channel for sales to flow through. To put it in very basic terms, it's kind of like a license to hunt. You know, you have the license, but you still have to, you know, get the shotgun and go out there and start hunting. So that's a quick rundown. From a document perspective, it's a pre-negotiated kind of agreement between, you know, you, a contractor or a company, and the government, the GSA being the branch that represents the government there. And there's a lot of pre-negotiation that goes on. So pricing, you know, your GSA discounts are hammered out during the process, and then a lot of terms and conditions are agreed to and hammered out as well through that process of getting into the program. Altogether, it's a long-term contract, 20 years. And it's chopped up into 5-year increments. You have the 5-year base period, and then you have 3 options to renew. So altogether, it's a pretty long contract, 20 years, if everything goes as expected. The second perspective that we can kind of define what is a GSA contract is kind of from your perspective as a company. So for you, it's a sales growth engine. It's a license to hunt or a sales channel, as I went through earlier. So you gain an advantage in the federal market because you gain exclusive access to opportunities that you would have no sight into otherwise. If you are selling products, you can list them on GSA Advantage, and that's kind of like the Amazon.com of the federal government, or one of them. And if you are selling services, then you get you know, e-buy notifications, which are basically just government leads sent to you by email every day for the most part. You know, so you get a lot of access to opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. As a kind of a intangible, GSA contract will give legitimacy to your business, and you might see some added advantages from there as well. For example, many GSA contractors see an increase in sales federally, even outside of the GSA program, just because you're in the program. It legitimizes your company enough to where any government buyer, GSA or non-GSA, sees you as less of a risk. And then the final is, what is the GSA Contract Program? as viewed by the buyer. Government buyer, whether they're with the Army, Department of Education, Commerce, whatever agency they might be, they see the GSA Schedule program as a friction reducer. So it makes their life easier and it cuts down their risk. One way it does that is it cuts a lot of the red tape, the federal acquisition regulation. These folks have a tough job. They have a very big document that changes all the time that they have to, that basically guides them, and they could get in some trouble if they deviate from it. So a GSA contract takes some of the liability off of them, and if something goes sideways in a purchase and it was through GSA, they can kind of point the finger over at GSA and say, well, I use them, so I shouldn't be in trouble. If they go outside of GSA, they take on a little bit more liability there. It simplifies the purchasing process because the GSA has those tools like GSA Advantage and GSA eBuy. So it streamlines a lot of things on their end. And it also is, GSA contractors are, folks that have gone through a process with the GSA, due diligence, pricing negotiations, all that stuff. So it's a smaller pool of more qualified competition. So a lot of buyers enjoy that. They might have a really big project that if they went and threw it on SAM, they would get 100, 200, or a bunch of proposals sent their way. But if they throw it on GSA, then they'll get a smaller number of proposals, but they will be of higher quality, at least in theory. So I'm done with that. That was just kind of the little rundown of what a GSA contract is, definition-wise, and a couple different perspectives. But now let's talk about eligibility. Do you qualify for a GSA contract? That's the big question. That's always a good place to start. So the first one, and this is a big one, GSA requires that you be in business for 2 years. This is, I'd say it's a very ironclad one. There is kind of a side door around this if you are offering innovative solutions. So if you're in the IT space, there's a program called Startup Springboard that would allow you into the GSA program. But if you're outside of IT, not really any way to get around this. In these cases, I will usually kind of nurture a company if they reach out to me and they're a year or fewer than you, 2 years old. I'll kind of tell them, okay, well, you're not there yet, but let's get out. Let's make sure you have all the steps in order, and we'll make sure that once that 2-year crossover happens, everything is in place. All right. Second one is that what you offer the GSA has to, or what your offerings are commercially or elsewhere, have to fit into a GSA category. There's hundreds of GSA categories, so this is usually not too difficult of one, but there are some kind of no-no areas like ammunition and weaponry that the GSA just doesn't have on the list. There's also some limiting areas around construction from something called the Brooks Act, all that kind of stuff. But IT products, professional services, and then a handful of others. There's 12 large categories that the GSA has, and you just have to fit into one of those. That's just kind of one of the rules to get into the program. You also have to have past performance within one of those categories. Usually you can get by with just one project, but it's got to be recently built, within the past 2 years, generally, or shipped out, or fulfilled if you're offering up products. If you are offering up services, the GSA goes with something they call labor categories. That's basically like a job title. And for every labor category, it has to be covered by a project. Obviously one project can cover multiple labor categories, but if you're going in with, a list of 10 labor categories, things like SME, engineer, programmer, could be laborer, could be anything really. It's all, GSA doesn't have a preset list. They're happy to just let you use your list on that. But every one of those that you're offering the GSA or want to offer initially has to be sitting there and tied to a project. You can't have any labor categories that you go in with if they have not been billed in the past 2 years. And then as far as products go, it's not as, the requirement's a little looser. It's more of a sampling of the products being offered. So if you have a price list and let's say there's 100 products on it, if you can provide invoices for, usually 5 or 10 of those products, kind of spread out into different categories, GSA will usually be pretty satisfied with that. So yeah, the big thing here is that you have to build out and have past performance in that area. And the last one, and this is kind of, have an asterisk down there, not a disqualifying factor, but being financially strong is something that in the past 3 or so years, the GSA has put more and more emphasis on. It's nice to have profits showing over the past 2 years, and also on the balance sheet, it's nice if there aren't any kind of soft spots, current ratio, debt to equity ratio, all that kind of stuff. So like I said, not a disqualifying factor, and through 2020 and even 21, those were pretty rough years for business. The economy was struggling and all that stuff, and the GSA does have a lot of lenience that they will give in this area currently, but I'd say as things start strengthening up again in the economy, and hopefully they do, this financial strength will be something that the GSA focuses on again even more. But all that being said, you can't just write the word COVID on a piece of paper, scan it, and send it to them. You have to have a pretty good narrative and write up to display how COVID impacted your business and how you are still financially strong. GSA doesn't want to see a lot of companies fail. A lot of companies have been failing over the past couple of years. So GSA wants to just have some assurance that you are a pretty safe bet in this way. And then the last one, I just kind of clump everything else in and call them compliance factors. So TAA is something that comes up, Trade Agreement Act. This is basically, if you're in the product space, the country of origin, there's a good list and a bad, there's basically a good list and a bad list. And the bad list, of course, has China on it. And any countries that we don't get along with so well, they aren't going to be on the good list. All the products that you offer can only be from the good list. So, of course, US, Canada, Mexico, Germany, most of Europe, a good number of countries in Asia. But there is a list and there's a place to go. If you need that, reach out to me and I'll get you a link so you can look across that. And yeah, this is probably a good time to just note that the GoToWebinar app there has a place you can type in some questions. So I'll keep on going here, but ask away. We will get around to your questions. We're only about a half hour in right now, and I will leave a little bit of time at the end to get around to those. So yeah, back to this. We covered TAA for products, but on the services side, we have a couple other ones. We have this, subcontracting. So there are some limitations around subcontracting on your GSA contract. It's an extreme case, but the GSA doesn't want to, award somebody into the program and then have them go and start subcontracting, every project that comes in. They want the company to perform a certain amount themselves. The other one is wage determinations. So SCLS, formerly SCA, and then of course Davis-Bacon. Those do come into play sometimes in certain cases. There's a clause called the price reductions clause, which basically, I won't go into it too much. That's a whole webinar itself, but it's a way that the GSA reaches into commercial sales practices. So if you have a good consultant, like myself, they can help you navigate that. Otherwise, get to know that clause from the solicitation really well and navigate it really well. And then there is a minimum sales requirement. So the GSA takes into account if your offer doesn't give them a warm fuzzy feeling that you are going to sell 25,000 through the GSA program in the first 2 years, and then 25,000 every year after that, then they may reject or at least push it back and say, hey, can you get us a marketing plan or something to show us that your sales are going to be there. So this comes up a lot if your sales if your total revenue for the past year or two has averaged somewhere around 100,000 or less. The GSA may come back and say, well, your revenue is not super high. That 25,000 is a quarter of what your revenue is, so that's a pretty big increase. We want to know how you feel like this is going to be something that you're able to meet as far as that minimum sales. So all that comes into play. There are a couple other qualifying factors, but I'd say they're in the very obscure area. These 5 points cover pretty much everything. If you hit on all these 5 and everything seems like it's just fine for you, about a 98-99% chance you'll get awarded. Not that it won't have a, they do make this an obstacle-ridden process, so not always easy, but as far as eligibility and finally getting awarded, if you persevere through it, good chance. If you have any questions on this, drop them in the side there. I will get around to them. If I can't get around, or maybe your question is a little sensitive and you don't want to share it in a group setting, I'll have my email there at the end later, and you could take that down and shoot me an email directly, and I'll get back to you directly. But yeah, now let's go over the fun one. Eligibility is absolutely necessary, but let's talk about dollars. That's where everybody's kind of happy to. That's where we're all probably perking up. So what we're going to basically do is we're going to ask the question of, will a GSA contract grow your business? And like I said before, we're going to go over this in a very, we're going to show you the good stuff and the somewhat sobering side of things. So the first thing is that the GSA program is growing. Overall sales, all sales through the program went from 33 to 36 to 39 billion from 2019 to 2021. So you could see in that little chart there, we're seeing the program expand. Cybersecurity and COVID-related, sales are a big part of it. GSA was kind of front lines. They pushed through a lot of initiatives quickly to make government spending go through GSA and help help the agencies respond to these 2 very critical areas. So we saw a 9.5% increase from 19 to 20, and then we saw a 6.1 increase from 20 to 21. All right, so here's the breakdown now of services to products. Quite simply, 3/4 of GSA sales goes towards services, and about 1/4 goes towards products. I'll get into that a little bit later. And here's another breakdown. These are the GSA sales by category. So I mentioned earlier 12 large categories. These are all of them. So information technology, professional services, industrial supplies, transportation and logistics, human capital, facility services, facility and maintenance services. So you can see that one's there in the purple. Going on down, security, furniture, miscellaneous is kind of a hodgepodge of other ones. Then there's travel, scientific and laboratory products and services, and then office products and services. So the big numbers are right here in millions. Off to the right here in the legend, 20.3 billion went to information technology, which was about 52% of total GSA sales. 24% went towards professional services. Professional services is chopped up into many subcategories. Everything from business services to marketing and advertising, financial and legal, language services, environmental, engineering. So covers a lot of ground there. Then we have kind of the group of 4 and 3 percenters, going from industrial all the way down to what is that, security, and then it's kind of the 2 to 1% down here. Now this is a little bit misleading, and I'll tell you why. The information technology covers over half of the sales. So you might be thinking, if I'm not in IT, why even get a GSA contract? Well, it is very noteworthy that there's a trend if you dig in deeper, and I'll get into this in a minute and give you some really good numbers and show you what I mean. But typically the level of competition matches the the percentages you see here. So this high percent comes with it, a very high percentage of the competition. So most GSA contractors are in the IT space, as you could imagine. And then the level of competition kind of matches the dollars. So we're talking about the smallest category, office, being having about 450 million in sales per year. So still a pretty good number there, and there is a pretty small number of office suppliers compared to the number of suppliers in the IT space. So next we're going to go down the list of these different categories But we're looking at them in a different way, and we're kind of drilling down to what I think is the best way to look at this ROI-wise. Pay close attention, and I'll repeat myself if anything doesn't make sense. But this right here is the expected ROI by category if you're selling off GSA right in the middle of the average. You know, think of it as the bell curve. You're right at that top point of the bell curve. You're selling average. Now there's a very there's a handful of contractors to the left of that curve that are getting no sales or very little sales. There's a handful of contractors to the right that are getting much more than this. But up in the middle, you have that that kind of big group, the group of the average. And what we're looking at is, you know, if you're in IT and you're performing basically in the middle of GSA sales for IT, you're looking at about 3.9 million a year revenue. Professional services, it's at about 2.2. Facilities is at about 1 million per year on average. Security and protection, 1.2. Industrial, 1.7. Furniture, about 1. Scientific is at about 0.6 million, so about 600,000 a year. Human capital, about 5 million a year on average. Transportation and logistics, 3.9. Travel, about 7.8 million per year on average. Office management, about 400,000, 400,000 or so. 1.7 is per year is the average for miscellaneous. And then if we take the average among all GSA contractors, we say take all of GSA sales, divide them by the number of contractors in the GSA program, it's 2.4 million per year on average that goes to each contractor. Now, next, what I'll be getting into is how that's distributed, and that is kind of what I'd call the sobering or the bad news, and that's why I put the word positive here, and you're going to go ahead and find the word negative over here. Now, ROI, still kind of talking about ROI, but there are 36% of contractors in the GSA program that have no sales. So it is definitely by no means, you know, by no means are you going to guaranteed anything here. You do have to work for it. You have to pursue opportunities. You have to draft proposals. You have to go after them. Nothing's handed to you. And then there's an additional, you know, on top of this 36%, there's about an 8% group that has GSA sales, but they're below that $25,000 mark. Therefore, they're still at risk for cancellation. So of this whole group, which adds up to about 44%, they're all at risk for cancellation of their contract for lack of GSA sales. What that means is that bell curve I had described earlier has kind of a big lean towards the left side of it. There are, there's a big group that is not doing so hot, and then there's a group of about 56% that are doing really well. They're hitting the 25,000 per year mark and going up from there. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now, that's all the numbers I got for you. I am known to be pretty generous in doing some specialized research too. My place I see in this is to help. So if you email me and you want a rundown of any intel on any competitors that are on GSA, I'm happy to do the legwork to get you their GSA sales numbers. Sometimes that's a good approach too. This approach is very general. It's the best I could do in this setting. But if you have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 competitors that you know are in GSA, or you're pretty sure they might be, send me an email. Give me those names, and I will respond within a day or two, usually, with a rundown of their GSA sales. Because you could look at that and you kind of get a good idea of what they're bringing in, and you can kind of say, well, I'm just as good as them. If I jump into this, and in a couple of years, I should be bringing in just about the same amount of revenue. So yeah, that offer is out there for you. Again, I'll have my email here at the end, and no strings attached. You're not expected to sign on or anything like that. In fact, I do this all the time, and I'm really here to help you make a good decision. The last thing I want to do is get anybody into the program and have us all go through all this time and effort, and you spend your money and everything, and it goes nowhere for you. So back to the webinar here. The GSA, growing your business with a GSA contract really is, it happens through GSA tools. And these are what I would call the selling tools. GSA Advantage is the place that products are listed and buyers go to, and they pull out the credit card and they buy them. Sometimes there's larger purchases, but a lot of them are credit card purchases. GSA eBuy is the place where once your contract is awarded, when buyers go into their end of this system, they kind of check the category, and if you're in that category, they check the category and they upload all of the details around the project that they're searching for, the solution. And when they hit go, you get an email with everything they just uploaded, and you can respond through the eBuy system in return. So if it's a good project for you, you can take a look at the RFQ document, the request for quote, and respond to it, draft a proposal, you upload it right back into eBuy, and it's in there. They're going to be, and then they make their determination by the end date. And then FBO, I still call it that, but it goes by SAM nowadays. There are some GSA exclusive opportunities in there. Just like something could be set aside for small business, women-owned, 8A. There are some where the buyer says, this is a little bit bigger than an eBuy purchase is going to allow for, but I still want it to be only GSA companies that respond to it. And then, it's not on there, but your information is all placed into a system in eBuy, or a system on the GSA site called eLibrary, and that's kind of like your landing page. So sometimes buyers will do the homework themselves and come up with a small list of qualified vendors, and they'll reach out to you by email and just send you the RFQ or a rundown directly, and that happens as well. So that's it. That's all I've got here today. If you want to learn more, definitely, you can go to my site, gsafocus.com, and there's an orange button. You can click on there, download the free resources, and that'll get you a lot more information. Hopefully that's helpful for you. You can email me there, Josh, my name, of course, at gsafocus.com, and you can call that number there as well. So yeah, we're going to kind of get around to questions. I will go down to this page, and this kind of still has the stay in touch, my email, my website and phone number. And thanks for listening through this. We had a lot of folks. We had about 98% of you stayed on through this whole presentation, so I hope you found it helpful. Alan, go ahead and feel free to jump back on and kind of commentate on the questions that came in. I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. Kim's got a question. What if we get accepted for services consulting, go back and get products added once performance on products is achieved? Is that possible?
Yes, it is. And I'm happy to say it, because about 2-3 years ago, it wasn't. You'd have to go and get a whole new GSA contract. But the GSA lifted the walls between all of the categories, and now it's handled through a modification rather than an entirely new offer. So answer, Kim, is yes, absolutely. You just have to have sales and price list, and in some cases a letter of supply from the manufacturer.
Okay, great. Angelina's got a question. Great presentation. Is U.S. citizenship required to obtain a GSA schedule, or do you need or permanent residency? Is there anything in the application process that distinguishes between U.S. and non-U.S. citizens?
No, not really. I've gotten international companies into the GSA program: South Korea, Italy, Japan, and of course a lot of Canadian companies as well. So U.S. citizenship's not required. It doesn't come up in the process. The way that it works really is the GSA looks at the entity. The entity is front and center. If the entity has a DUNS number and an EIN or tax ID, then you're good to go. Okay, great. Let's see. I can answer this one for Michelle.
what's the difference between GSA bids and the ones you see on BidSpeed. So, Michelle, GSA is actually, like Josh said, it is a buying vehicle for the federal government. In order to have access to RFQs that are being sent out by agencies through the GSA schedule, you have to obtain the schedule first. So the difference is what you see on sam.gov flowing through is what they call full and open there. So that means you don't have to have a GSA schedule to bid on it. In order to bid on an item that's flowing through a GSA schedule, which again is a buying vehicle for agencies, you would have to have the schedule. Josh, do you want to add anything to that?
No, you got it perfectly, Alan. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's see. Crystal has a question. I was told that if a business had a negative revenue the previous year, they will not be approved. Is that true?
Not necessarily. You definitely have some explaining to do. So the GSA will evaluate your financials, and they actually have their own special financial review center out of Kansas City with two ladies that specialize in this. And the way that I handle that, you know, for every offer that I'm looking at, I look at the three major areas that I know the GSA looks at, which, of course, the bottom line on the profit loss, and then on the balance sheet, the current ratio and debt to equity ratio. And if there's anything that's not kind of, you know, that's a little bit soft, I'll draft a cover letter for the financials and explain it. And that's really that's really just all about getting out in front of the problem and kind of not letting the GSA's imagination run wild on that stuff. And then the other thing you could do is, you know, we're talking about the financials for the past 2 years. So if you have some interim financials that do kind of change the narrative and show that there's an upward trend, you know, that the past 2 years is not necessarily where things are heading, then, you know, we'll include that as well. Or if you've landed any major contracts that aren't showing up on the most recent end of your financials, then that's definitely. So I just try to, you know, bring all of the positive details into the light as well to help the GSA make that analysis. And nowadays, I've found that if you're in good hands, then so, you know, in other words, somebody that's pretty good at dealing with the GSA in that way, then you're pretty much going to be looking at award.
Okay, great. Let's see, Tiffany, how long does the GSA schedule process usually take in obtaining an award?
6 months, give or take a month, if everything goes smoothly. Sometimes sometimes you're surprised and it's quicker, and other times there are some holdups that get in the way.
All right, let's see. Let's see, does a business need to have employees, or can you join the schedule as a sole proprietor?
There's no requirement that you have to have employees, but as a sole proprietor, there are some things. You know, if you subcontract a good portion of your projects, then that could be something that, you know, that does cause some you know, pain points from time to time. GSA doesn't really have any solid requirements on that, but as you go to use your GSA contract, the buying side, the end user, they very likely will have some requirements that say that you can't subcontract over 50% or some other percentage. So, you know, typically in those cases, I'll actually, you know, I'll say, you know, if you have a good system to bring people on as an employee just for those contracts and then offload them after, that's a competitive advantage. And I know there are some companies out there that are pretty good at setting up all the HR, payroll, and all that stuff rapidly. If you land a $3 million contract and you need to team up, or you need to build a team, they're good at getting you there.
Okay, great. Crystal's got a question. She has applied for her AA and is awaiting for approval on that. Should she wait until she gets approval before moving forward with applying for a GSA schedule?
There's no reason not to. So I pretty much always recommend to just go. If you want to get a GSA schedule, go after it. There's no reason to not do it on paper. If you always have to consider your time. 8A could be a little bit time consuming, but if you feel like you can manage them both, then go for it. And sometimes the 8A process has some overlap with GSA, so it is kind of nice to handle them both at the same time. And then when you come out of it, you have both, and that's two feathers in your cap.
Okay, great. Stephen's got a question. With a newly formed JV, does that JV have to have past performance, or can those two companies utilize their past performance and submit that jointly?
Yeah, great question. You can leverage past performance from both companies. They don't have to, the past performance doesn't all have to be from the JV.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think we hit most of the questions there. I'm not seeing one jump out that I looked over. We answered a few of them just by typing a response back there. So I think that's all the questions we have. Josh, do you have any final comments?
Just a big thank you. Welcome to 2022, and thanks for coming on today. Hope you have a great year. And like I mentioned, my email is there. Reach out if you have any questions or if I could do anything to help.
Okay, great. What I would like to do real quick is show you the upcoming webinar here, if I can find my mouse. In the upcoming webinar, next week's GSA schedule briefing will be on focus on competitors and crushing the competition there. So Josh will dive into that. So if you want to participate on that webinar directly from your dashboard in your SBA 7J portal, you can register directly from there. We'll also be sending out an email invitation as well. So make sure if you don't hit it on your dashboard to just register from the email, and we'll see you on the next call. Josh, as always, thank you very much for coming out this week. We will talk to you next week. And for everybody that is online today that maybe does not have the access to the SBA 7J portal, you'll want to do that at sba7j.fedbidspeed.com there, as well as if you need to email or engage with Josh direct, there's his contact information that's captured on the recording as well. So thanks a lot, everybody, for coming out. Our third and final webinar this afternoon is coming up in 10 minutes. That is the Federal Opportunities Report. So you will want to, if you have time to stick around for that, you'll want to log off of this webinar, log on to that one, and we will be reviewing the latest releases of sources sought amongst a group of NAICS and any NAICS that you request during the call there. So thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon. Happy New Year, as Josh mentioned, and we look forward to working with you all throughout 2022. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.